Peter Valley, FBAMaster.com here. In this video, I'm going to cover what I call the 3 levels of book sourcing mastery. You guys probably didn't know there's levels to this game. And I'm going to define what each one of these is and why it is absolutely mandatory for your continued success in the Amazon book selling business to reach level 3 as quickly as possible. This has nothing to do with revenue, by the way. These levels are by skill. Now, here's the bad news. Most of you are probably in level 2 right now, maybe level 1, probably 1 or 2. Level 2 is actually worse than level 1. I'm going to get into all this in a second. And level 1 and level 2 must ascend to level 3 as quickly as possible. And fundamentally, what this video is going to teach you is how to acquire more inventory in less time. That sounds good. I know it does. Let's get into it. So who is this video for? Number 1, this video is for you if you are doing the single sourcing model. You're not wholesale sourcing. You are assessing the value of books before you acquire them and bring them into your inventory, okay? Other people call this cherry picking. Number 2, this is for you if you're one of those sellers who scans everything. You go into a book source and you just look at a bunch of books, and they all have an equal likelihood of being valuable in your mind, and so you just scan every single book, okay? Or alternately, if you're not scanning everything, but you don't really understand your decision process. In other words, you look at a bunch of books, you're like, okay, I'm going to skip these and focus on these, but you don't really know why. You don't have a formula, an articulable formula in place. This is for you. We used to have this term, I don't know who coined it, they were called scanner monkeys, and I heard this again recently. I was like, we need to bring this term back. Scanner monkeys were people that would go into a source, and again, they would just scan everything, and they were just completely robotic in their approach and would turn off their brain and just defer entirely to their scanning app. Okay, so we're going to get you out of scanner monkey phase, get you out of level 2, that's level 1, get you to level 2, out of level 2, and then into level 3 as quickly as possible. Okay, so how are we going to get you more inventory, more revenue in less time? It sounds paradoxical, but think about it this way. It would take you 8 hours roughly to scan 10,000 books individually, assuming like 3 seconds per book or whatever, okay? That's a lot of time, 8 hours, and a lot of sources have more than 10,000 books. Level 3 sourcers have that down to 10 minutes. And I'm going to do this math for you at the end of this video so you can, because it sounds crazy, but there's actually a way they're extracting more profit in those 10 minutes than the people who spend 8 hours. We're going to get into all this. Okay, I'm going to knock some of you off your high horse right now because a lot of people watching this think they're level 3 and they're actually not. So I'm going to get this out of the way. You are not level 3, unfortunately, if any of the following apply. If you ever go to a library book sale or some other, let's just say a library book sale, and there you see someone that's got 8 bags full of books, or boxes for that matter, while you're still filling your first. If this has happened to you, unfortunately, you're not level 3 yet. We'll get you there. If you know sellers who have access to the same resources as you, but are achieving much better results, and same sources as you, and they're achieving much better results, you're not level 3, and they probably are. A couple of examples. I think level 3 is actually pretty rare, and I'll define what each of these are, obviously, here in just a second. Now, before we get into what the levels are, I first started to understand this concept by spying other sellers. And if I remember right, it was from some friends. Like I would, maybe this is relatable to some of you, but like you kind of get your friends in Amazon selling, and then they're usually into it for a minute, and they just kind of move on to other things. It's usually how it goes. So I had a couple friends. I think particularly it was one girlfriend I remember who I got into selling books on Amazon. And I remember we go to the same sources every single day. We go to the same sources, and we had the same equipment, same scanning app, same everything. She knew how to read the data, and we would come out of every source, and I'd have like literally 5 times more books than her. And I remember her getting really mad at me, and then me kind of being just confused. Like, I don't understand. We have access to the exact, like, we're literally in the same source with the same equipment. How can I get 5 times more books than you? And I did a bunch of diagnostics, and like, are you reading the data wrong? And like, everything was equal, but it was just, there was some like mystery element here that I couldn't figure out. And then I realized it was my ability to focus on the books that had a high probability of value and only scan those, whereas she was just scanning everything randomly. Consequently, it seems, again, like a paradox, but like, even though she was scanning everything, I was coming out with more inventory than her. It's kind of weird how that works. So when I talk about level 3 sourcing, here are the 4 reasons you must ascend to level 3. And again, I know I'm kind of getting kind of far in this video without defining these yet. We'll get to that in a second. Here's why this is absolutely mandatory. Well, number 1, you can almost never scan every book at a source. I don't care what it is. It could be the world's smallest thrift store. Unlikely you're going to be able to scan every single book. So it's very rare where you have that ability to scan every book, which means if you're a level 1 sourcer and you're scanning everything, unfortunately, you're not able to scan everything, or you're wasting a massive amount of time. Number 2, you never should scan every book, even if you have the time to do it. Why would you? 99.5% of books are utterly worthless. Why would you not want to ascend to a level where you can identify those 99.5% without using your scanner? Number 3, your profits are directly tied to the speed and quality of your scanning. In other words, how quickly you can get through a large amount of books and the amount of value you extract from those books. That's what level 3 will get you, that level 1 and level 2 will not. Number 4, value is not accidental. There are patterns to book value. And again, most people they think that if you've got, a book in one hand and a book in the other, that if one book's worth $30, the other was worth $5, they think it's somehow just completely random. The $30 book is $30. That's not the case. There are principles that create that value in the $30 book that are absent in the $5 book. And so you have to understand there's patterns at work here. And once you understand there's patterns and that your scanner cannot be relied upon solely to tell you what book's valuable and what's not, because again, you can't scan everything most of the time. And also scanners have blind spots, which is a whole other issue. So once you understand that it's actually up to you largely to determine what books are valuable and what's not, everything changes. And that's when you ascend to level 3. So I'm going to talk about a concept here that I call scanner dependence syndrome. And I don't want to offend anyone. I may have to do it. Most sellers have a robotic approach to sourcing. They don't know books. They don't really understand books. Books are just kind of a widget. And they just, again, depend entirely on their scanning app. At best, they're memorizing some titles. They sort of pick up patterns here and there in terms of titles. Like, oh, this book, this title tends to be worth money. And so they know it when they see it. But that's about as far as it goes. They don't understand the principles. They basically outsourced all their thinking to an app, right? This is level 1 and to a certain extent level 2 sourcing as well. Which brings us to a concept I call pre-scanning. Pre-scanning is the science of filtering your options before you pick a book up to scan. This happens in a split second. It's not about sitting back being like, let me run this book. I'm looking at the spine of this book. Let me run everything I can gather from the spine through my mental Rolodex of principles and then spit out a possibility, a likelihood of this book being valuable in about 10 seconds. That's not what I'm talking about. Everything we're talking about here when it comes to pre-scanning or getting to level 3 happens in a millisecond, like an actual literal millisecond, okay? And this is not voodoo. This is actually something that's teachable, and it's going to come largely from experience, but I'm going to kind of shortcut you through the learning curve in this video, okay, when we get into what the 3 levels are. So does that make sense? So you look at a shelf of books, you're like, all right, I know with not certainty, but a high level of probability, these 99 books are going to be worthless, and I'm going to focus on that 1% that I think has a high likelihood of value. It might be 5%, it might be 10%, and I'm going to focus just on those, just solely based on my immediate reflexive response to looking at sometimes even just the spine of a book, and then ignore the rest, and you'll actually come out ahead. It's wild. Okay, so here's what we're going to cover. Level 1 sourcing, don't want to be that person. Level 2, don't want to be them either. Most of you probably are. Level 3, that's what we want. You want to be that girl with the big, white, pearly teeth with thumbs up who's thrilled to be alive. You don't want to be the first 2. So let's define these. Now, before we do this, let's go head to FBAmaster.com, get all the free stuff you can see here, all the reports, over 600 pages of free material. I am not kidding. All this is entirely for free. Hit the link below to go to FBAmaster.com. Number 2, subscribe to the YouTube channel. You guys have heard the news just like I have. Trump has been talking a lot about this lately. People that don't subscribe to the FBA Master YouTube channel. He's saying things, like he's talking about putting people in camps that don't subscribe to the YouTube channel. I think that's directionally correct. I think it's a little extreme. I'll talk to him about it. In case he does institute martial law for people that don't subscribe to the YouTube channel, just avoid all this. Subscribe right now. Hit the button below. Also, you need a repricing tool. If you're selling on Amazon, I don't care what your inventory level is, you need an automated repricing tool. I have the best one. It's called NeuroPrice. You can try it for free to prove it is in fact the best one. NeuroPrice.io. Link is also below this video. And I have an article version of this video at FBAmaster.com. I'll put a link below as well. And I go a little more in depth than I'm able to in this video, so hit the link if you want to go deeper in the subject. Okay, you guys. Level 1 book sourcing. And as we're going through this, I want you to ask the question, which one are you? And be honest. A lot of people think they're level 3. Very few people are. A lot of people who are level 1 think they're level 2. So be honest with yourself here. Okay, level 1. Let's get into it. These are the sellers who scan everything. They go into a book source, and they're scanner monkeys. They pull out their scanning app, and it's just boom, 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 boom. They're going into complete goblin mode and just going completely insane and just scanning every single book blindly and relying on their triggers to tell them what's worth money. Okay, that's a level 1 sourcer. It's kind of I'm not entirely sure. I don't really have like hard data on this, but I tend to think most sellers get out of this phase pretty quickly, and they go to level 2, which is actually worse than level 1, if you can believe that. If you're not gonna be level 3, you want to be level 1. This will all make sense in a second, but it's not in ascending order of awesomeness. It's actually level 1's actually better than level 2. and I'll get to this in a second. But if you're scanning everything, you are level 1, okay? It's completely scattershot. In other words, you're just going to a field, just a source, just like a crazy person, right? You believe, as a level 1 sorcerer, you believe inherently that book value is assigned merely just by the randomness of the gods, and that's it. In other words, you got 2 books. If one's worth 50, one's worth 5, you just think it's completely random why the $50 book is worth $50, okay? To the level 1 sorcerer, any book is just as likely to have value as any other. So in other words, you have 2 books, they look at both books, and if they had to choose which one's worth more, it would just be a coin toss to the level 1 sorcerer. And since scanning everything is rarely possible, the level 1 sorcerer misses out on tons of books. Or if they do scan everything, there's an opportunity cost. So let's say you go to like a thrift store and like you scan everything and you have the time to do that. Well, technically you extracted probably the maximum amount of value from that source, but guess what? You could have gone to 3 other sources at that same time. So there's an opportunity cost to being a level 1 sorcerer. Okay, now we get to level 2. And by the way, be honest with yourself. You might be level 1. That's okay. We're going to get you out of that as quickly as possible. Level 2, this is the danger zone. Level 2 is worse than number 1. And before I tell you why, I want you to pay close attention and see if you can figure it out, okay? This is where you go into a source and you scan what looks valuable. So you think you have a formula in place, but you actually don't. It's basically random, but in your mind it's logical and rational. Level 2 sorcerers are scanning, they're not scanning everything, they're being selective, but they're scanning based on basically unfocused guessing. And it's informed not by principles, but by just guessing. But here's the trap. A lot of level 2 sorcerers think that they're relying on principles, and they're not. It's actually randomness that they sort of put this veil of legitimacy over, and they think they're actually really smart about this, and they're actually not. It actually is guessing when they actually think it's more than that. It's barely less random than level 1. Level 2 sorcerers understand that not all books are equally likely to have value. So you're probably a level 2 sorcerer. You might have like actually looked at level 1 that we just covered, and as I'm going through that, you're like laughing at those people, like mocking them in your head, right? But unfortunately, the joke might be on you if you're level 2, because as I'll get to in a second, level 1's actually better. But to level 2 sorcerer, you sort of understand, okay, well, I understand it's not random that books have value, but how you decide what has value is random, basically. And at best, the level 2 sorcerer relies on titles and categories, but not principles. In other words, you're like, all right, I kind of understand that maybe business books are a little bit more likely to be valuable than, you know, romance novels, or maybe they're focused on titles. Like, okay, I know the titles I'm looking for, but again, they're not focused on principles, so you still miss out on massive amounts of value. Okay, it's actually the worst. As I said, the worst level, and this is why it's the worst. Level 1 sorcerers, at least they're scanning everything. At least they're extracting all the value that they can from a source. It's totally inefficient and like terrible, but at least they're getting everything, right? Level 2 sorcerers are not scanning everything, and since their decisions are informed by basically guessing, they're missing out on tons of profit, and they're not scanning everything. They're coming out feeling like they got most of the profit, and they really didn't. So you're spending more time than level 3 for less money, and you're also getting less money than level 1 as well. So, and unfortunately, I do think the majority of sellers I interact with are in this level. And again, I'm going to say it for the 5th time, try to be honest, because if you're sitting back with your arms crossed, like, oh, that's not me, I bet there's a very good chance it is you. And I'm going to tell you how to get past this. We'll get to all this. Okay, level 3, principle-driven sourcing. Now, this is where a lot of you are sitting back. You're like, I can't wait to see what he thinks level 3 is, because this sounds like some kind of Santeria, like rain dance level mysticism, and it's not. Okay, what do I mean by principle-driven sourcing? It's understanding what I call the 4 laws of book value and being able to process those in a microsecond. So here are the 4 laws right now, and I actually have a separate video just about the 4 laws. It may not be up by the time you watch this, but I go massively more in depth here. But let's just skim through what these are just really briefly. The law of recency, the law of relevance, the law of necessity, and the law of irrational passion. Every single book, without exception, that is worth $15 plus, one or more of the 4 laws apply. Okay? So what this means is if you can glance at a book in your subconscious brain, remember our subconscious brain does most of the heavy lifting of our thinking. Like what we perceive rationally is, I forget the exact number, but it's like, 1% of the data that we process is processed in our conscious brain. Our subconscious does most of the work. So when I'm talking about these 4 laws of value, when you can look at a shelf of books and assess in a microsecond, your subconscious can go, okay, the 4 laws of value apply to these 5 books and not these 95 books. And so they focus on the 5 books. That's what I'm talking about. Okay, so how do you see profitable books everywhere? Okay, so what you see here is that this slide is actually the thumbnail for the video where I cover the 4 laws of book value. The order in which I release these videos, I'm not sure. It's probably up by now. It might not be, just whatever. Go look for it. But I go much more in depth, okay? So we don't have time in this video. It's worth a separate video just to digest the 4 laws of value, okay? So let's do the math here. What is actually the actual results of level 1 versus level 2 versus level 3? So I'm going to analyze this in terms of time and profits. So you can decide, hey, actually, maybe I just want to stick in level 1. Like, you might actually just be like, I want to stay with level 1. I'm comfortable here. I would urge you to not be level 2, but let's do the math here. Let's say you go into a source and there's 10,000 books in the source, and let's assume it takes an average of 3 seconds per book. Now, that might seem a little bit slow for some of you that are just like go crazy scanner monkey mode, but you think about it, like you might have to like stop a little bit. I'm just talking about on average. Let's just say you from the moment you start to the moment you stop, you do not, on average, every book takes 3 seconds. That includes you're stopping to like check a text message or whatever. Okay, 3 seconds. That's 30,000 seconds it takes to scan 10,000 books. And by the way, if you wonder how many books 10,000 is, it's not a lot. That is not a lot of books. So what that translates to is 500 minutes, which is 8 hours. It's actually over 8 hours. So it's going to take you 8 hours at 3 seconds per book to scan 10,000 books. And by the way, if you're level 1 sorcerer, you have no choice. You have committed to this lane. You must scan every book. Otherwise, you're just wasting your time because then you're only getting through half the books. If you don't scan everything, it's like, well, what's the point? So you may as well be level 2 at that point. Okay? Now, level 2. Let's do the math on this. So 10,000 books, same source, same 3 seconds per book. It's actually going to take a little bit longer. It's actually going to take a lot longer because you have to move between the books. Like you're not just going one book to the next. You have to stop, process. So it's actually going to take longer. So I'm being really generous to level 2 here. That's 6,000 seconds. That's 100 minutes to scan to get through 10,000 books if you're level 2 sorcerer. That's an hour and 40 minutes. Now let's get to level 3. So we got the time down, by the way, from over 8 hours to just under 2 hours. But again, level 1's making more money. So it's probably worth it to be level 1. Now we're getting to level 3. And the numbers are a little fuzzy here, again, because if you're level 3, you're taking more time in between scanning, so you're not actually just going rapid fire. Like you're taking time to process what you're looking at, to focus on that 5%, right? So 3 seconds per book, 200 book scan, 600 seconds, 10 minutes, again, a little bit generous, right? Because, again, we're not accounting for the time between. It shouldn't be too much worse than this. We could round up to 15 if you want to. Like, if you're really argumentative and you want to, like, henpeck me over the details here, we could say 15 minutes to get through 10,000 books, okay? So here's the punchline here. Level 3 sorcerers are making more money than level 2 in 1/10 the time. Because level 2 is random. So they think they're not random, but they are random. So they're not really getting much profit at all. But level 3 sorcerers, because they understand the 4 principles of book value, they're extracting more profit in 1/10 the time. Or if you want to hold me to 15 minutes, it's like 1/7 the time or whatever. Crazy, right? This is why you must get to level 3 as quickly as possible. And this is why understanding this concept of getting to level 3 and the 4 principles of book value is kind of the missing link of book sourcing. This is why it's so valuable. So here's how level 3 sourcing will change your business. Number 1, it will allow you to hit 8 sources in a day instead of just 1 or 2 or 3. When there's a book that you have to look up manually, this is a huge one. I can't believe I got this far in the video and not cover this yet. When there's a book that doesn't have a barcode, first of all, level 1 sorcerers skip those books entirely. Entirely. It's impossible for them. Okay? Level 2 sorcerers kind of understand that a lot of books that don't have barcodes have value, but it's random. They don't really understand how to tell what's from what, the 1% from the 99% of garbage. So when you actually understand the principles that drive book value, you can focus on that 1% and avoid the 99%. Otherwise, it's just impossible to find any books without barcodes as a level 1 or level 2. When you find a book that has no listing, in other words, you find a book that has actually no product page on Amazon, which is, not terribly common, but there's a lot of money in books that have no listings on Amazon. This will allow you to isolate the books that have no demand from the ones that are simply obsolete. Very, very important. Level 3 sourcing will allow you to clean out a book sale while your competition is still on the first table. They're over in the textbooks. It's their first stop, and you've completely cleaned out the sale while they're still scanning the textbooks. Level 3 sourcing just makes you a more motivated seller because your batting average is 100 times higher than level 1 sources. So it just increases your confidence. Makes you like more sustainable in the business. It's just better all around. And quite simply, level 3 sourcing allows you to see value in books everywhere. Now, most of us are living in this false dichotomy, believing we either must memorize 50 million books that are in Amazon's database, or we have to turn into robots where we just scan everything, right? Most people believe it's just you only have those two options. There's another level to it. It's actually 2 more levels, but the level you want to get to, level 3. So before we end this video, you guys, you got a 3-part mission. Are you ready? Mission number 1, subscribe to the YouTube channel. They're putting people in camps very soon. This is going to be really, really serious. Subscribe and avoid that fate. Mission number 2, get all the free stuff you see here at fbamaster.com. Do it right now. Hit the link below. Mission number 3, sign up for the free trial, 14-day free trial for NeuroPrice, the best repricer out there. You need a repricer. Your current repricer is obsolete. Head over to neuroprice.io. Click the link that says why NeuroPrice better to see all the reasons that NeuroPrice is better than your existing repricer. Mission number 4, take what you learned in this video and actually apply it. Go make money with it. That's why I made it. This is Peter Valley signing off, and I'll see you guys in the next video.